Okay, so this is a very short video about the fundamental difference between positioning and messaging. Um, the biggest killer of good positioning is that fallacy that the positioning has to be something that you can promote. Kills good positioning in lots of ways. It kills it overtly when someone says, but we can't say that in a workshop, or we can't prove that, or we can't claim that. That's the easy one because you can hear that out loud, right? You can hear people say, look, and what they're saying is that they don't understand positioning. They think it's about messaging, but it also kills it in lots of subtle ways, like that kind of odd or mistaken view that you somehow need to put a TPP into your research when you're doing research for positioning, or that belief that positioning has to be a message, or has to translate literally into messages. So here's a positioning, here are the messages that fall out of that. And of course, that fallacy is based on the idea that you achieve a positioning by just saying it to people a lot. I'm going to tell you that my product is the best, and I'm just going to keep saying it until you somehow believe me. Now imagine if it was true that your positioning had to be something that you could say today. How would you ever be able to position your product in phase 2 or phase 3 or beyond, to be honest? And of course, that problem separates those companies who believe positioning is something that you do for promotion and those who actually understand positioning. So let's remind ourselves, you don't achieve a positioning by just saying it to people over and over again. Your positioning is not a claim, it's a belief. So because it's not a claim, which comes first? Is it the claims or is it the positioning that comes first? Well, let's examine both scenarios. First scenario, you compile a list of all the things that you can promote from today. Now, if you're in pre-launch, you've already got a problem. Or you have 95% confidence that in 6 months you're going to be able to say all of these things because that's where your data is going to be. And then you derive a positioning from the most compelling thing within that list. So that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is you decide which space in the mind of your customer is the most attractive. And then you move heaven and earth to put your product into that place, to collect data, to help build the unmet need, to create stories that position your product in that place. Now, one looks like a circle, one that only goes backwards, one that never gets you beyond where you are today. The other is a triangle, which is where you start to build towards where you want to be. So let's think about it, just a quick illustration of exactly that. So let's imagine this is you, and you decide that you want to go through a positioning exercise, and you rely on where your existing data are, and therefore what you can say today and what you might be able to say easily, and then you derive your positioning from that. Well, you're back to square one, you're back to where you are today. Now, good luck if that's where you want to be. The alternative, of course, is that you derive something that looks more along these lines, which is that you start over here with my finger in there, which is you, and then you start to think about a positioning over here, which is where you want to move towards, and then you decide that you're going to start to collect certain kinds of data, and you're going to build an unmet need, and you're going to collect more data towards that unmet need. Now, this triangle is a very, very different thing than the circle, because you don't stay where you start. You end up somewhere fundamentally different. And that, of course, is the point of positioning. So if you think more circles, this is your customer, and in her mind, there is a space that you want to occupy. Let's say it's the space where she's thinking about LDL therapies, and let's maybe zoom in to what that space looks like and what kind of space there might be to own within that space. Now, more circles. In that world of LDL therapies, you have all kinds of things. Let's say that your clinical folks have decided that percent reduction in LDL is is the easiest thing for anyone to study. They might choose speed of drop or breadth of drop, or they might decide that somehow it's going to be safer than everything that's ever existed. They might decide to go with what the cardiologists have said, which is it's all about CV outcomes or whatever. But let's say that you decide that you'd really like to occupy that reversal of atherosclerosis mind space that sits out there. Well, in your circle fallacy, of course, you can't. You're going to draw out a feature or two that's derived from your LDL reduction search, and you're going to somehow come up with something that looks nice out of all of that. Well, it's not going to be about atherosclerosis reversal. But let's imagine that triangle scenario, that you've decided that your product has a chance at owning that space, the ownability, the sustainability, and so forth. So, first thing, you ask your clinical colleagues, could you include that measure in your clinical study? You might find they say yes. But they'll probably push back and say, well, actually, anyone could do that, because it's obvious that a product that does what we do would reverse atherosclerosis. Well, here's the thing. No one else has done it. No one else has put it into their study yet. Then you ask your comms colleagues, your communication guys, to establish reversal of atherosclerosis as a key unmet need via disease area education. Again, not mentioning your product. You don't have to talk about your product to achieve a positioning. You can ask your medical colleagues to write thought pieces on the mechanism of reversal or the benefits of reversal. None of this yet involves you saying that your product reverses atherosclerosis, because you're building towards it. And the beauty is, once you're there and you can finally promote with data that no one else thought to collect, you're alone. You're alone on that mountain. The unmet need is clearly established, and all those that never got started are wondering how you got there. So all of that, of course, the circle versus the triangle, comes down to that question of what positioning is for. And this is the biggest mistake I see across pharma, and the biggest mistake of bringing ad agencies in to talk about your positioning, or frankly, from market researching your way to a positioning. A lot of people think that positioning is for communicating where your product is at, not where your product is going to be. And that's why you end up with this problem of messaging based challenges to your positioning, which is you can't say that. Well, that's not the point of positioning. If you go back to the circles, if we can't say that as a reasonable challenge for a positioning, you're forever bounded by what you or your R&D colleagues chose to study. Even worse, you're constrained by the data that's already produced, sitting in there. Now, that might be a challenge that's worth listening to if you're already on the market. You're in 5 years and you've collected some data and you just need a better campaign to start next month. But that's not where most people are, or where most people should be. Most people should be positioning their products at the end of phase 1, again at the end of phase 2, and again within phase 3, because those 3 phases have different needs. But let's not get drawn into that square box problem of thinking that positioning and messaging are the same thing, or that somehow you achieve a positioning just by saying it over and over again. That's not the way this works. So remember the circle. The best off that you could be, if you're going to think about just saying nice things about where your data are, is back to exactly where you are today. If you position for the future, you can kind of reel yourself in with permission to get to a place that's ownable and meaningful. So that's all I wanted to cover in this session. Thank you.